is a very serious and sad game with quite dark topics. It's very Lovecraftian, so I just want to let you know that if you're not wanting to relax to that right now, I understand, but this is not real life. It is all video game lore. And additionally, on that note, it is all speculation. From software doesn't give us much actual like facts to go off of, so this is largely speculation that I have found online. So don't take it necessarily all as complete truth. And I will post little pictures throughout around here on the screen. So let's get into it. If you have played Bloodborne, you likely know the frustration of going through Old Yharnam, or rather, dashing through Old Yharnam. For this forgotten sector of Yharnam, in this area, someone from above just unendingly showers you with bullets. The second you step out of a sheltered spot, they target you again and again and again and again and again and again. And that someone, the high-up wielder of the machine gun, is retired Hunter Djura. The same Djura who left a hunter's note at the closed gate of Old Yharnam, stating, "This town is long abandoned. Hunters not wanted here." End quote. But if you ignore this warning and enter Yharnam, Old Yharnam, he is also the booming voice calling down, saying, quote, "You there, Hunter, didn't you see the warning? Turn back at once. Old Yharnam, burned and abandoned by men, is home to only beasts. They are of no harm to those above. Turn back, or the hunter will face the hunt." End quote. So, retired Hunter Djura appears to be the self-appointed protector of this Old Yharnam, a city inhabited only by beasts. This is our first encounter with Djura, and it certainly brings up some questions. To understand Djura and his actions better, it is quite likely that the influence of the healing church very much depended on the events in Old Yharnam. Long before our night, like our character's night of the hunt, a different sickness ravaged the streets of Old Yharnam. The Ashen blood, Ashen blood, Ashen blood, Ashen blood. And we know this from the item, the antidote description, which is, quote, used to treat ashen blood, the baffling sickness that ravaged Old Yharnam long ago. These tablets only provide short-term relief. The ashen blood ailment eventually triggered the spread of the beastly scourge. Triggered the spread of the beastly scourge. End quote. This item description is very curious, particularly when you consider what antidote as an item does. It heals and stops poison build up. So it's like a poison treatment. And it's curious that the baffling ashen blood disease spread rampant around the time of the rise of the healing church's power in Yharnam, and that it was treated with a poison antidote. And it is even more curious when you consider how different church attires often have a higher, slow, and rapid poison resistances. So these church members gaining power here have uniforms that are poison resistant. And all of these suspicions reach a boiling point when we mix in the description for the white church garb, which highlights the church's focus on, quote, experimentally backed blood ministration and the scourge of the beast, and that they believe, quote, that medicine is not a means of treatment, but rather a method for research, and that some knowledge can only be obtained by exposing oneself to sickness. End quote. So, with all that being said, many people speculate that the ashen blood, ashen blood, ashen blood, ashen blood sickness was secretly and purposefully spread by the healing church in Old Yharnam as a form of research for them. And the citizens of Old Yharnam were their guinea pigs, guinea pigs, guinea pigs. And it's possible that this was done through some sort of poisoning, perhaps in the water supply, given that the antidote tablet items were the treatment. So this was all possibly some slash who are these powder keg hunters? Well, the description for the powder keg badge reads, quote, "Badge crafted by the powder kegs, heretics of the workshop. The powder kegs' adoration of complex design and big booms culminated in weapon designs that contrast with those traditionally of the workshop. The late powder kegs, bless their souls, had a motto: if a weapon ain't got kick, it just ain't worth it." End quote. And this badge is given to you or dropped by Djura. This description lets us know that the powder kegs are no more. They were probably quite an old faction of the workshop, and, you know, even the current Hunter's workshop isn't really relevant anymore in our timeline of Bloodborne. And these powder kegs were labeled as heretics of the workshop for some reason. And finally, this description lets us know that they had a love of elaborate and perhaps excessive weapon design. And I don't know how accurate this thought is, but I kind of think of it as a steampunk kind of gunslinger class, or like Percival, if you've ever listened to Critical Role's Vox Machina campaign. That's just kind of what these powder kegs remind me of. Anyways, the other weapons in Bloodborne crafted by the powder kegs showcase their gusto for fiddling with weapon inventions. The rifle spear is a, quote, trick weapon crafted by the workshop heretics, the powder kegs. A prototype weapon serving as a simple firearm and spear, possibly created in imitation of a lost Cainhurst weapon. Lacks any notable functions, saving that it is the only trick weapon with an attached gun. End quote. The stake driver is a weapon that Djura actually uses, is a, quote, trick weapon fashioned by the workshop heretics, the powder kegs. The stake driver allows for high damage critical attacks, but it is difficult to use and leaves its wielder wide open. But none of this should bother a mere powder keg. End quote. And that description really captures the powder keg spirit. It's a little bit reckless, quite ambitious and complicated weapon design, kind of for the sake of the love of weapon design. of singed blood, end quote. So that description lets us know exactly what role Djura and his powder keg allies played in Old Yharnam's cleansing. They brutally cleaned up what was left behind the flames. Citizens, men, women, and children, they were all purged. Another of Djura's allies, coined Djura's disciple, is found in the hunter's nightmare. So they were likely corrupted from the hunt like many other hunters. They also wear the charred hunter's set and appear to be non-hostile towards beasts in the cave that he is in. He uses the Gatling gun, which further connects him to Djura and the powder kegs, as the Gatling gun description goes as follows. Quote, "This is a highly customized portable version of the stationary Gatling gun operated by the Hunter Djura in Old Yharnam. It was the weapon of choice by the youngest of Djura's 3 companions. The Gatling gun boasts exceptional rapid-firing functionality, but it is considered a cumbersome weapon due to its excessive weight and insatiable consumption of quicksilver bullets." End quote. it is very possible that Djura maybe even witnessed his companion go through this and be taken by the nightmare, and then decided to either remove or cover his own eye as a precautionary measure. So I thought that was very interesting and gave a small detail about kind of maybe hunter culture, which I thought was very, very fascinating. Okay, but back to the main story here and Old Yharnam. Something very significant found in a building in Old Yharnam is 2 charred bodies, who are most likely powder kegs, as one of them holds a rifle spear, which we already know is a powder keg weapon, and the other wears the charred hunter set. So, quite likely, these were 2 powder keg hunters who were sent in to cleanse Old Yharnam alongside Djura. Now, what is so significant about these corpses is the hunter's note they left behind. This note reads, quote, "The red moon hangs low, and beasts rule the streets. Are we left no other choice than to burn it all to cinders?" End quote. The red moon hangs low, and beasts rule the streets. Are we left no other choice than to burn it all to cinders? And the key words here are red moon, as this could reference a blood moon just like the one we experience on our night of the hunt. So far we know that Djura was affiliated with the powder kegs and involved in their brutal purge of Old Yharnam. amazing skill. No one has seen him for many years, and he looks like he's been on his own for some time. End quote. So, after Djura severed his ties with the dream, accepting eventual death, and renounced his vows, he returned to protect the beasts of Old Yharnam he once viciously hunted. It is possible his 3 powder keg companions joined in this, and perhaps this is why the powder kegs are branded as workshop heretics. And it is speculated that Djura, uncommonly kind as he is, uncovered the truth about Old Yharnam, that the healing church insidiously planted this plague that ultimately caused its destruction, all in the name of research. Who knows what horrors Djura saw and committed to the citizens of Old Yharnam during his night of the hunt under the blood moon. But Djura has changed and now watches over these beasts with his life. He sealed away Old Yharnam and left his note of warning I discussed earlier to any hunters who may venture there. He even gives us multiple verbal warnings. I really don't think he wants to hurt us, but just will if we harm the beasts, who are, quote, of no harm to anyone above, end quote. Now, Djura's sympathy is rooted in this piece of dialogue from him, quote, "There's nothing more horrific than a hunt. In case you fail to realize, the things you hunt, they're not beasts, they're people." End quote. So, the kind and foolish and tragic Djura is repenting his past actions by protecting these abandoned, once human beasts from the hunters he believes are the real beasts. And this is no easy task to manage. It is amazing and a real testament to Djura's character that he has not gone blood drunk and fell prey to the scourge himself. And interestingly enough, Djura's Ashen Hunter set has the highest frenzy resistance